So I'm curious whether people out there think that strikes actually work. Having never actually been part of a company that striked before, never even been in a union, it's a kind of a weird phenomenon to see from the outside.
Is this going to be our Women in Tech episode where like three guys who have never been in a union are going to talk about whether strikes work?
Yeah, probably.
Three white guys are going to talk about women in tech.
I think striking works.
Yeah, I think so too.
Oh, okay.
End of episode.
End the episode.
Thanks for everybody. Like and subscribe. Well, so I know why I think a strike does work, and I'll share that. Peter, why do you question whether it does or not? Like, have you not seen evidence of that?
I've seen a lot of evidence of companies doing whatever the fuck they want, just regardless of how employees feel, and they're kind of union busting activities that take a long time to stopped, and all the things that they will do to fight this kind of stuff. So I think eventually they do have to have an effect. I suppose there's no other recourse at some point, but this one, Amazon workers are striking at the moment, right? And Amazon just laid off 3% of its workforce, which was 100,000 people. I don't know, it's tiny amount, a huge number of people in a tiny fraction of its workforce. So if a bunch of them strike, when you were looking at this story before we were recording, you said the stories that we've looked at are from the 25th and the 28th of November. Yeah. We're recording on the 30th. So all these strikes were planned by Amazon, and it seems like there's been no follow-up.
Yeah, because all we could find was articles from like 4 or 5 days ago when it happened, nothing in the recent. So I think there's two different issues, Peter, in what you're asking. One is, do strikes work? The other is, do these strikes work, right? So there was a time in the US where there was a very strong labor movement. We had strong unions, and those unions got us 8-hour workday, a 5-hour work week, a minimum wage, health benefits, a lot of employee protections, paid vacation holidays, like a tremendous amount of benefit came from unions because of effective strikes. I think where that started to change, and maybe was an inflection point, was when Reagan forced the airline workers back to work in the 80s when they were striking. And we're actually seeing something very similar to that now with the Biden administration asking Congress to overrule or force the railway workers in the U.S. right now to accept a deal that is kind of a shit deal. So strikes work, but the labor movement in the U.S. and it sounds like in the U.K. are not as strong as they were, and that power has definitely shifted to the corporate side.
So I think when we talk about unions are very socialist. I was going to use communist as the example or the tie-in, but they're socialist in nature because you kind of all work together. It's all about the people, and it's harder to get in, but it's also harder to get kicked out. Leaving or getting like tossed from a union is almost impossible. Like you really got to mess up and I mean big time. Like you are so protected. And I imagine that yeah, exactly. Any union, electricians union, plumbers unions, all of these are and the reason they're so superior to a free market, I guess, if you want to call it that, is that they pay the best and get the best contracts. And I think that probably has to do a little bit with nepotism and I imagine just like old-timey like networking, just being that connected. Anyway, moving on. I imagine the downfall of the labor movement or unions in America was probably like down with communism. I don't actually know this, but I'm imagining that it was like a down with communism like propaganda campaign where they were saying like you don't want us to be like Russia or China, like come work for a free market job or a free market company. What are your thoughts?
You're collecting them, Peter?
Yeah, well,
did we freeze? Did you freeze?
Me? Sorry, I didn't know. Me in particular. I mean, absolutely. It's kind of sad though, because the strikes and the unions are really only trying to fight for what's actually fair in the first place. So they sort of shouldn't have to exist. On the flip side, there's a lot of corruption in the unions themselves as well. Like you mentioned, the police unions protecting. I don't know if you guys watched Brooklyn Nine. Was it Brooklyn 911? Is that what it's called? Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Thanks.
Is that what you meant? The comedy Brooklyn Nine-Nine? That's what you meant?
Yeah. The comedy.
Okay.
It's all about a precinct in New York and in Brooklyn, and Brooklyn's in New York, right?
Yes,
I think. Yeah. I knew that. There's a recurring character on there who's the senior doctor from Scrubs, if you know that guy. That guy. I don't know. That's where I recognize him from. And he plays the police union representative or officer or whatever it's called. And he's a steaming asshole. He's always trying to protect, actual police brutality and the way he twists the words and stuff. And I know it's a parody, but it kind of seems like some of the actual stories that I've heard. So, yeah. But I mean, in general, unions seem like a good thing. They just kind of shouldn't really have to exist in the first place, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the ebb and flow, though. Like John alluded to the attacks on the unions. So unions arose in response to employer abuses and got a lot of good shit done. But, where there's money and power, there's corruption. So that leaked in. They got a reputation of being very difficult to work with because they were hard-ass negotiators. So then the corporation started their, as John said, propaganda campaigns. You could say marketing campaigns to say like, oh, unions are impossible to work with. They're corrupt. They're whatever. The government got involved and crushed some organizing efforts. I mentioned the airline workers strike. So weakened that side of the movement. Corporations got more power. Now we're starting to see unions coming back in. Chipotle, Amazon, Starbucks, the railway workers. There's a lot more organization around building up the labor movement again. And I think it's great.
And Peter, to go back to your original, do strikes work? When you own an entire industry, strikes work, right? When, I don't know, 100,000 teachers go out onto the streets for a full week or month and strike, there is no firing these teachers because there are already not enough teachers. And same goes for Amazon warehouse workers. Same goes for, like, you can't just snap your fingers in a labor shortage and say, let's hire all new workers. Like, the whole industry will come screeching to a halt, which it already is halted because of the strikes. So do strikes work? I think so.
Yeah, I guess it was kind of a dumb question, really. I mean, I can think of some examples where they didn't really have, the question was, I was thinking about Amazon. So the Amazon stories there's tons of strikes going on in the UK as well at the moment. There was a thing I heard recently where, because nurses are striking, and they wanted like a 19% pay rise, which is crazy, but it's actually really only in line with inflation because they haven't had a pay rise for ages and inflation's gone bonkers, and they should have been paid more in the first place. So they want to be put up to normal. And the Prime Minister said something like, well, we want to treat them very fairly. Obviously 90% is not going to happen, but we'll try and come to some reasonable arrangement. So again, it was like, they kind of might get a bit of a pay rise, but it's not really what should be happening.
I mean, maybe it's just not a big enough strike.
Well, or it was a big enough number to get what the number that they actually
that they really wanted.
was.
Yeah,
Where's
maybe.
inflation at in the UK now, Peter? Are you guys sitting around 10%?
Yeah, 11,
So
13, 11, I don't know.
I imagine if I said, if I was part of this leadership of the nurses union, I'd say, well, we want 10, so we're going to ask for 20, right? And
Yeah.
when the government offers 8, we're going to negotiate counter back with 10, and then the government's going to say, oh, you drive a hard ball, and then everyone's happy.
But if you're asking, did this Amazon strike work? That's a totally legitimate question. This is now 5 days ago, as we're recording, that Black Friday happened when they striked. Peter and I both looked and were unable to find an update on the news story. You're not seeing stories about shipments are massively delayed and it had a major impact on the economy because none of these things went out. And I kept thinking, like, so did they actually even strike? What was the impact of the strike? Clearly not enough to cause Amazon any significant harm.
I think it's in the title. Amazon warehouse workers stage Black Friday strike.
Yeah.
So did they strike on Friday and Saturday and Sunday? Did they basically just kind of hiccup the deliveries?
Yeah. But I mean, I think that's what Peter and I are saying is like they striked, sure, but did it have any impact? Did a strike work? No.
I don't think we're gonna know if it has had an impact. Not yet.
If it didn't show up in revenue, it didn't have an impact. Like Amazon doesn't care.
But it's so soon. It was last week, so we can't know right now.
I don't know. I think we would
find out. I think
if Amazon stopped sending shipments for a day, the world would know it.
Yeah, but Amazon isn't only using Amazon warehouse workers. They're also using a bunch of other types of workers, like contractors and contract companies. And I think I don't know. That's my answer. I don't know yet. I don't know. We might talk about it next week. We might never bring this up again.
All right, like and subscribe.